You stopped texting. You stopped calling. You thought she'd notice the silence. You assumed that the moment you disappeared, she'd pause. She'd wonder. She'd feel the emptiness. But she didn't. She kept posting stories. She kept going out. She laughed like nothing happened. She lived like you never existed. You waited. You checked your phone more times than you care to admit. You hoped she'd message first, liked your post, or asked where you went. But silence came back to meet your silence. And now you're stuck. Not in peace, not in power, but in confusion, pain, and resentment. This message is for you. The truth about her silence. Silence is only powerful when it's real. Not when it's forced, not when it's a tactic, and not when it's driven by the hope that she'll suddenly miss you. Many men go silent thinking they're being mysterious, thinking they're taking control of the situation. But what they're actually doing is pausing their words while leaving their energy wide open. They delete her number, but still memorize her last post. They unfollow her, but still search her name daily. They disappear physically, but stay emotionally glued to her life. That's not true silence. That's noise wearing a mask. Silence, when done right, is not about making her wonder. It's about you no longer caring whether she does. It's not a power play. It's not about causing her discomfort. It's about stepping so far into your growth that her presence fades into irrelevance. But what most men do is create a temporary void filled with obsessive thoughts. They say nothing out loud, but inside they're screaming, questioning, comparing, hurting. They stop calling her, but every alert on their phone still sparks a flicker of hope. They stop texting, but every photo she uploads feels like a secret message meant for them. That's not power. That's paralysis. And the brutal reality, she feels it. Even in your silence, she senses your need. She can feel the emotional strings you're still pulling from behind the scenes. Women are masters of emotional detection. They've learned through generations how to read the room, how to sense presence even in absence. And when your silence is soaked in pain, regret, and unspoken desperation, it doesn't make her regret walking away. It reassures her that she made the right choice. To her, this kind of silence doesn't feel like confidence. It feels like passive chasing. It feels like emotional codependency with the volume turned down. Instead of wondering what happened to you, she sees exactly what's going on. A man stuck in confusion, pretending to be unbothered, yet constantly monitoring her digital life for signs that maybe, just maybe, she still cares. But that's the trap. Silence only becomes effective when it's born from transformation, not from tactics. When you're silent because you're healing. When you're silent because you're building something so meaningful that your attention has moved away from her entirely. That's when silence speaks. That's when it starts to haunt her thoughts. But until then, your silence doesn't disrupt her life. It confirms she made the right decision. So ask yourself, is your silence actually silence? Or is it a quiet cry for attention? Is it power? Or is it just the absence of words while your emotions remain in the same place? Because the truth is, unless that silence is backed by evolution, it's not hurting her. It's only holding you back. Why you're still invisible. You may believe that going quiet makes you appear strong, that silence makes you look like the one in control, that stepping back means you've regained the power. But strength isn't in the absence of words. It's in the presence of energy. And whether you speak or not, your energy speaks volumes. The truth is, women don't need your voice to know what you're feeling. They don't need your texts or calls to sense your presence. They read between the silences. They feel the emotions you try to hide. Because emotional awareness isn't just something women are good at. It's wired into their biology. For generations, women have relied on intuition and instinct to sense shifts in emotion, to read body language, to detect uncertainty, fear, confidence, power, or lack of it. It's not a skill they learned. It's a radar they were born with. And if the silence you're offering is wrapped in fear, regret, sadness, or masked desperation, she picks it up instantly. You can unfollow her, block her, vanish from her life completely, and she will still know whether you're gone because you've grown or because you're hurting. If you're silent, but still emotionally tethered to her, it shows. Maybe not to your friends. Maybe not even to yourself at first. But to her, it's obvious. She can feel it in the way you suddenly pop up in the background, not physically, but energetically. The way you watch her stories, the way you post things hoping she sees, the way you try to be quiet but still leave a trail. Every post, every like, every attempt to move on is transparent to her. It doesn't feel powerful. It feels desperate. And that doesn't pull her closer. It pushes her further away. You think your silence is confusing her. You think she's wondering where you went. But she's not confused. She's not shaken. She's not hurt. Because your silence carries no weight, no mystery, no strength. It feels exactly like what it is. You're pulling back because you're still emotionally attached, not because you've moved on. And that kind of silence is never attractive. It doesn't challenge her. It doesn't make her question anything. It only confirms that the man she walked away from is still stuck in the same emotional space she left him in. While you're waiting for her to come back, hoping she sees the pain you're not expressing, you're unknowingly proving to her that she made the right decision. You're reinforcing her belief that you weren't ready, that you weren't grounded, that you were dependent on her validation to feel whole. And once a woman sees that clearly, she doesn't forget it. No matter what you post, no matter how much time passes. If she feels weakness in your silence, she will never be drawn back to it. Because to her, that weakness signals danger, the emotional kind. The kind that says, if I go back, I'll have to carry this man emotionally again. So your silence must not be filled with longing. It must not be a disguise. It must be real. Because if the energy behind it is still begging for her attention, she will feel that. and she will run from it. Power isn't in saying less, it's in needing less. And until that becomes your truth, you'll remain invisible to her. Not because she can't see you, but because there's nothing in your energy that demands to be seen. The mistake men make: silence without transformation. Many men think that silence alone will fix the pain. They believe that pulling back, cutting contact, and going cold will somehow flip the switch. That the woman who walked away will feel their absence and come running back. So they stop calling, they stop messaging, they delete numbers, unfollow accounts, and even block her entirely. But deep down, they haven't really left. Emotionally, they're still sitting in the same room, still watching the door, still hoping she'll come back and knock. And that's where the real trap lies. Silence without change is not power. It's just a pause in your suffering. You're not healing. You're waiting. You're not detaching. You're freezing. Nothing inside you is shifting. You go through the motions of no contact, but your mind replays her name every morning. Your heart still imagines her every night. And during the day, you scroll through social media, wondering if that post was meant for you, if that smile hides a regret, if that caption is a secret message. This isn't growth. It's emotional paralysis dressed up as discipline. The mistake men make is confusing silence with progress. Just because you're not speaking doesn't mean you're evolving. You may be quiet on the outside, but if your inner world is still spinning around her, you're not free. You're just pretending, and pretending never leads to power. You can't fake detachment. You can't pretend to not care, because even if you try to mask it, the truth always leaks through your actions, your eyes, your energy, and she will see it, she will sense it, she will know. You must understand this. True silence, the kind that makes her question herself, doesn't come from tactics. It comes from transformation, from a deep personal shift that rewires your direction. You stop thinking about her not because you force yourself to forget, but because your life is suddenly filled with things that matter more. You don't check her page because you're too busy building your own reality. You don't care what she's doing because your mind is consumed with your mission, your goals, your craft. That's not pretending to move on. That's actually moving on. The man she left can't be the man she regrets losing, because the version of you that waited, hoped, longed, and lingered is exactly the version she walked away from. So unless you evolve into someone stronger, sharper, more grounded, not for her, but for yourself, your silence will never have power. It will only serve as a mirror of your stillness. And stillness is not strength. Stillness is stagnation. Don't try to appear unavailable. Become unavailable. Become so focused on yourself that emotional chasing becomes impossible. Create such a powerful internal world that the idea of seeking her approval starts to feel laughable. Because only then will your silence begin to make noise. Only then will your absence carry weight. And only then will she realize that the man she left is gone. And the man you've become is someone she never even had the chance to know. There comes a point in every man's life when he finally understands that the pursuit of someone who left him is not only a waste of time, it's a betrayal of self. This is the moment when silence transforms. It stops being a tool for attention and becomes the natural byproduct of growth. When you reach this point, you don't choose silence, it simply happens. Because you no longer have the emotional bandwidth to chase what doesn't serve you. Your days are too full of purpose. Your mind is too occupied with vision. Your heart is too busy building something that has nothing to do with her. This is what real silence is. It's not a stunt. It's not a reaction. It's the natural outcome of someone who has finally remembered his worth. When your focus shifts inward, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but out of genuine clarity, something changes in you. You start waking up earlier. Not because you have to, but because your body is now aligned with something bigger. Your time becomes sacred. Your attention becomes expensive. You begin to treat yourself as the asset that you are. You no longer carry the weight of heartbreak like a wound. You carry it like a badge. Because it was the rejection that forced you to rise, the pain that shattered your comfort zone and revealed the cracks in your identity. And from those cracks, something stronger emerges: discipline, drive, direction. You begin to understand that real men don't use silence to make someone else suffer. They use it to rebuild, to reload, to rise. And that is what makes your silence so loud. Your silence becomes heavy because it's built on a foundation of momentum. You're in motion now. You're gaining mass, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. You're no longer looking back. You're no longer sitting in the same emotional chair where she left you. You've outgrown that version of yourself. And in doing so, you've also outgrown her role in your story. She wasn't the destination. She was the trigger, the lesson, the broken bridge that forced you to take another path, a path that leads you deeper into yourself, into your potential, into your purpose. You're not disappearing to punish her. You're not going silent so she wonders. You're vanishing because your world no longer has space for anyone who couldn't see your value when you were fully present. And that's what makes you untouchable. Not the absence of words, but the undeniable presence of transformation. The man who was once needy becomes the man who is now needed. Not by her, but by his mission. By his future, by the world that's been waiting for him to show up fully. This is the shift. From emotional chasing to spiritual becoming, from external obsession to internal mastery, from silence as strategy to silence as evolution. The turning point, when she feels your power. There will be a moment, and you won't plan for it. You won't expect it. You won't even know when it's coming. But it will arrive, quietly, naturally, without effort. A mutual friend casually mentions your name in conversation. She doesn't ask, but she hears it anyway. He says you're doing well. He says you've changed. He says you've been focused, grounded, different. And just like that, you enter her world again, not through chasing, but through curiosity. She didn't come looking for you, but now she can't stop thinking about you. Later that day, she scrolls through her feed. A post appears. Maybe you didn't even mean for her to see it, but it catches her attention. It's not flashy. It's not dramatic. It's real. You're smiling, but not the way you used to. There's a glow behind your eyes. There's clarity in your face. You look lighter, yet stronger. And even though you said nothing, the picture says everything. You've moved. You've grown. You've left the version of yourself she once knew far behind. That's the moment it begins to unravel in her mind. She starts to realize that you're no longer there. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You're not watching her stories anymore. You're not liking her pictures. You're not lingering in the background like a shadow waiting to be noticed. You've become silent in the way that shakes people. Not because you disappeared, but because you transformed. Now she's the one who scrolls through your life. She's the one pausing on every post, looking for meaning between the lines. She wonders if you're seeing someone. She wonders what you're working on. She starts asking questions, but not out loud, only in her mind. And those questions grow louder every day. Why didn't I see this before? Did I misjudge him? Was he always this strong, and I just didn't notice? Because here's what's really happening. Your silence, once empty, now carries presence. Your absence, once passive, now feels intentional. You're no longer orbiting her. You're no longer emotionally tied to her energy. You've become a man who's simply gone. And not because you vanished, but because you no longer belong in her world. You've created your own. She thought you would wait. She assumed your silence was temporary. She believed deep down you'd still come back if she gave you a sign. But now, she sees that your silence wasn't a performance. It was a portal, a doorway into the next version of you. And the version of you that stands on the other side? He's not looking back. You've become someone she no longer recognizes, someone who doesn't flinch at the thought of her, someone who doesn't pause when her name comes up, someone who doesn't slow down for memories. You're in motion, you're building, you're living. And that is what haunts her now. Not your silence, but the truth that she no longer has a place in your life. That's the power shift. That's when silence stops being a strategy and becomes your standard. Part 6. The truth about attraction. It's not history, it's perception, expanded. When a woman leaves you, she doesn't carry your memories like a treasure chest. She doesn't sit and reminisce about your kindness, your love, or your effort. She remembers how she felt at the end. She remembers the man you were in the final moments, uncertain, hesitant, reactive, emotional. That version of you is what shaped her decision to walk away. And that's what her mind holds on to long after you go silent. But here's what most men never realize. She's not going to miss the things you did for her. She's not going to suddenly rewind time and feel drawn to your old self. No matter how good you were to her, no matter how much you gave, no matter how much you sacrificed. If that version of you didn't inspire deep emotional attraction and respect, it doesn't matter. Because attraction doesn't survive on history. It survives on perception. It's not about who you were when she had you. It's about who you become after she lets you go. And that's the shift. That's the secret. That's when everything begins to change. Not because you begged or explained or chased, but because your energy shifted. You started to rise. You started to sharpen. You stopped being a man who reacted to heartbreak and became a man who used it as fuel. And when she sees you through that new lens, something unexpected happens. It's not the past she misses. It's the new present she no longer has access to. She sees you smiling differently. She hears your name through someone else's mouth. She watches you become more focused, more masculine, more purposeful. And for the first time, the image she had of you in her head starts to break. The version of you that was easy to walk away from no longer exists. Now you're harder to understand, harder to read. You're more confident, more grounded, and far less available. Your emotional energy no longer reaches in her direction. You're not watching. You're not waiting. You're not trying. And that silence, paired with growth, is what triggers her curiosity, then her confusion, then her doubt. She begins to wonder, not about the past, but about the possibility she missed. Not about what was, but what you've become. But let's be clear, this transformation isn't about making her regret. It's not about revenge or validation. It's not about teaching her a lesson. You didn't grow to win her back. You grew to win yourself back. You stopped leaking energy into someone who couldn't handle it. You stopped giving your best to someone who couldn't recognize your value. And you began to redirect that power into something greater. The path of discipline. The moment you decide to stop watching her life and start rebuilding your own is the moment everything changes. Not instantly, but permanently. It begins with a decision. A quiet, firm, unshakable decision. I'm done leaking energy into what doesn't grow me. That's where real masculine discipline starts. Not in the gym, not in the grind, but in the mind, in the soul. In that unseen corner of your inner world where you draw the line, not for her, but for you. You'll still feel the hunger at first. You'll want to check her profile. You'll want to know if she's with someone else. You'll crave closure, explanation, something to validate your pain. But every time that urge rises, you now have a new job. Transmute it. You don't suppress it. You don't deny it. You use it. That energy is not weakness. It's fuel, waiting to be redirected. You feel the urge to scroll? Grab your keys and go run until your legs scream. You want to text her? Open a book and feed your mind instead. You want to post something hoping she sees? Delete the app and start building something real. Something that will still matter 5 years from now. Because chasing someone who already chose to walk away will never lead you anywhere except back to yourself, broken and angry. But using that same emotional force to level up, that will take you places you never imagined. Masculine energy is not passive. It's movement. It's creation. It's the force that builds empires, leads families, shapes legacies. And yet, too many men waste it by pouring it into memories, fantasies, and people who have no intention of returning that power. You've got to stop. Stop feeding ghosts. Stop entertaining what-ifs. Stop giving pieces of your future to people who won't even be in it. Your silence cannot be hollow. It must be filled with action. Intentional, consistent action. Set goals. Get clear on your mission. Design a routine so sharp it cuts through your excuses. Wake up early. Train your body. Train your mind. Build your vision. And no, not for Instagram. Not for validation. Not for her. For you. Because discipline isn't about punishment. It's about clarity. It's about standing face to face with your pain and saying, you don't own me anymore. It's about choosing short-term discomfort over long-term regret. It's about becoming the kind of man who never again has to beg for love, approval, or attention, because he's too busy becoming the version of himself that commands respect by simply walking into a room. And here's the truth. You don't owe her your silence. You never did. What you owe is yourself. You owe yourself consistency. You owe yourself purpose. You owe yourself a life so full of motion, creation, strength, and self-respect that the idea of chasing someone who couldn't see your value becomes laughable. You don't win this by being missed. You win this by becoming unignorable, not to her, but to the world, to your peers, to your future self. You win by showing up so fully in your purpose that everything you thought you lost becomes irrelevant. Because now you're not the man waiting to be chosen. You're the man who chooses himself every day with every breath, with every rep, with every move. And that is where your real story begins. The man who is missed is not the one who disappears quietly. It's the man who reemerges as something unrecognizable, grounded, focused, respected, feared, admired. You're not doing this for revenge. You're doing it because the version of you she knew is dead. The new you is not interested in proving anything. He's too busy building, too busy living, too busy becoming everything he was meant to be. She left the man who needed her, but she'll want the man who no longer even sees her. That's what makes silence powerful. That's what makes your evolution undeniable.